sense or something. It looks bad either way to me. It's like a lose-lose to me. I don't like that.
Actually, I mean, we can start the conversation on transracialism a little bit, and I'm gonna give you like a really big grant to start with. And it's gonna be that you're actually correct.
Ah,
That
that
the what's it called? The types of that the arguments which apply to trans people actually do directly graft onto transracial people logically. Is that okay?
maybe, I guess. I
But
only make
like
one argument about trans people though, so that's 1 out of 1.
um the second thing, but the part where we're gonna have some contention is that we live in a world where these social constructs have very different uses and like histories, and on that front is I think where my important conversation is going to lie, and why I think that transracial people could cause harm. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think that's where you have to have it. All right.
So like for example, like the reason why I think transracial people are so cringe, to so to say, is because like um God damn it. So the reason I think transracial people are so cringe is because generally, at least from the cases that I saw, because I actually did some reading on this, and that's how I can't kind of came to the conclusion that you're right in the logical sense. It seems to be that most transracial people, there are cases where like there's a black man, I think, who he said he identified as a white woman. But there are cases, or most of these cases seem to be from the hegemony group in that society deciding to identify as a minority group and then live life as them, and then essentially give or speak or hold important positions as those minority groups in power. For example, Rachel Dolezal, most infamously, she was the head of her chapter of the NAACP, and while she did grow up with black people, like she herself isn't black, and only decided to actively like experience that discrimination when she decided to start identifying as a black woman, right? And so I think the harm for these things can really start to come in when like these groups of or when these transracial people start trying to speak on behalf of minorities and such. So
Well, I mean that same harm exists with like, I mean, for one, it exists with like transgender people.
so you're
If you're
right.
like a boy motor who's like super early in transition, etc., and then you're trying to like speak on behalf of like women's issues with like, catcalling or something, and everyone recognizes you as a man and in real life, then it's like, well, you should also not talk. But then also, like, I
Give
don't
me a
know,
second. You cut out. So
just even if you have any sort of like, I don't know, if you have like a genetic disorder or you like live in a different country or anything else that changes like your social relations with these things. Like I assume that like a Nigerian immigrant to America is going to have like a different perspective on race relations than like, you
an
know,
African American, just
yeah,
like a regular black guy in America.
yeah,
So you're right in that aspect, but like I'm going to like say something. You're right in that sense. Sorry, you cut out for a second. From what I understood was that it would be like a boy motor speaking about misogyny. Is that what you said?
yeah, basically.
Or and you're right. I don't really think that like trans women who had been socialized for most of their life as a guy um should have much weight in those conversations.
Well, I mean,
Um
unless they present it in public,
yeah,
as
yeah, no, no, unless they present in public and like they're starting to like socially transition and everything. But like if they're still presenting like as a man and everything, then like I don't really think they should hold that much weight in those conversations.
yeah,
But we do have a separate word for like when they do start to transition and they do start to experience like specific discrimination specific to trans women specifically, right? We have
yeah,
a trans misogyny. Or do you like
yeah.
that term, right?
But that's not misogyny directed at trans women. That's like a specific like kind of set of stereotypes and stuff that apply specifically to trans women. It's weird. It's not the same as like if a trans woman passes like as a cis woman and then gets catcalled on the street. That's not like trans misogyny, even though it's
Okay.
misogyny against a trans person.
So like so what I'm understanding is that trans misogyny is like misogyny plus you're doing it like because they're trans.
Yeah, it's like
Okay.
an intersectionality meme.
Yeah, so I guess my argument would be like if someone who is like transracial experiences some sort of like bigotry, I don't think it would be well to like call it racism. We could call it something like it's really
Like
stupid.
transracism.
Like trans racism, is that correct? Right? Because
Well,
they
that would
aren't.
make sense if it's specifically bigotry on the basis of the person being like transracial. However,
Yeah,
if someone just sees like a trans, Asian person and then like says, like an anti-Asian slur at them because the person believed that that person was Asian, then it's like they experienced racism.
yeah, they just experience racism, and that's
And then they
correct.
can speak on behalf of that if that regularly happens to them, you know? And
That
by
is
my
true.
understanding, Rachel Dolezal did like fully pass as black for a long period of her life. So it's like
She,
it seems like she probably can.
it seems like she probably can speak on those issues, but I guess the issues, I'd have to look at her timeline specifically, but it seems to me that actually let's search it up. I don't want to make claims out of my ass. Is that okay?
Fair. Reasonable.
Excuse me. All right, let's look at her wiki because I need to know to make this specific claim because I feel like it would make sense. If not, I'll just like ask you to, I guess, like hypothetically engage with me if that would be okay.
Sure. Oh yeah, and also, even beyond this, I don't know. I'm suspicious of anyone making arguments on the basis of personal experience, but I do recognize that's necessary to some extent, so this is like somewhat an important point.
Yeah, so I don't know the specific answer to this, but I guess my point is like let's say Rachel Dolezal became the head of her chapter of the NAACP like early on into her like transracial experience or her transracial identity. Isn't wouldn't that be kind of bad?
Why?
Because she I guess it would I guess my this argument sounds somewhat stupid, but it would be that she hadn't really essentially experienced an appropriate amount of like oppression or like racism for that specific role. So it's like pretty common for like in black youth or in black people's lives in general, even as young adults, for them to like experience a good amount of impression and have some sort of like black experience. But like let's say Rachel Dolezal had only been like had only started identifying as black for like 1 to 3 years, and then she took like a seat as the head of the NAACP. I think that would be pretty negative, right?
Okay, would you say the same about like a Nigerian immigrant to the United States becoming like head of a chapter of the NAACP after
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
only 1 to 3 years of being there?
Yeah, I would say that because the Nigerian immigrant hasn't really experienced American racism per se, right? They haven't really like they might have experienced racism or what in whatever form it is back in Nigeria, but they might not have as much knowledge as I don't know, maybe like a lower class person from Chicago.
Okay, so then I mean, well then that's not like an argument against transracialism or anything. That would just be an argument against like people in general.
No, that
Like
would
there's
my
nothing
point.
unique to transracialism is what I'm saying. That
No,
doesn't
yeah, no. I understand
yeah.
what the point I'm trying to prove here is that harm can be done from like from transracial people to these minority communities that they might want to identify as, right?
Well,
That's
but
kind of
in the same way they could do harm if they like, took a gun and then shot up an NAACP chapter. It's like that
I would
also does harm, but it's like
I
it's
could
harm that anyone.
I could claim like that there are specific types of harm that transracial people could do that couldn't normally be done, right? So like let's engage in this hypothetical here. like I'll create a hypothetical person for this. Let's say like John starts like identifying as like a black person at 15, and they live as a black person for like 6 years, right? They're like yeah, so he's 21, and he decides to write a book, and he's white, so he transitions from being white to black, and he starts to write a book about like his black experience, and it happens to like be filled with a lot of like negative stereotypes that he had been taught about black people from like when he was 15 years old. I would say that's a unique harm that transracial people can cause, and in the same way that trans people can also cause harm to their own communities unique to them.
Wait, but like say that a black child is adopted, like, or like there's, surrogacy or whatever, something that also results in, okay, now we have like a black youth who's in like a white community from like 0 to 15 or something.
Mhm.
It's like they might also, develop those same sorts of incorrect beliefs.
You're correct, but I would argue that from age 0 to age 15 in itself in a predominantly white community is inauthentic, like it is a black experience, right? Like it is
Okay,
something.
so is the only difference just that like they weren't treated like as black by those people?
Yeah,
Okay.
maybe.
And it's like, okay, so if you're transracial, do thorough research before writing a book, because your experience might be more likely to be misleading, I guess.
Yeah, it would have to be like I think the way that I would accept like a transracial person trying to speak on behalf of um minority groups would be if they fully understood the culture that they were a part of, and then they also essentially looked at their own underlying biases with extreme prejudice, and then once they did that, I think I would be fine with like a transracial person speaking on behalf of like that minority community. Does that sound fine?
Maybe it depends on like, I don't know. It feels kind of like you're holding them to a higher standard than I
And
feel like you would with other minorities.
maybe it's like a personal thing. I'm about to do like an anecdote Andy thing, so I hope you don't mind. You can call me out on it if you want. But
Well,
like
I'll do that after.
don't worry about it. You can do that. We'll each get one. So like in my head, I'm a Latin American person. I'm pretty brown. I have pretty ethnic looking hair. And I speak Spanish pretty fluently, and I grew up in a very like Latin American household. If like we gathered a conference of like Latin American people to come speak, and like a lot of people who showed up were like really what I would call white passing Cubans, who didn't essentially partake in this Latin American culture, who don't speak Spanish, and who essentially pass off as normal Americans, and they tried to speak on behalf of other Latin American people. I feel like that would be a harm or a negative thing, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so you can do your anecdote, Andy.
Well, I don't have counter anecdotes. I
Or
work on
or
pure
you can pose
facts
a
and
counter.
logic.
You can post a you can do a counter argument or like try to poke holes through mine.
Well, it's like, yeah, I mean, that does seem like it could be bad. I mean, unless these people are like shockingly, well researched or whatever, and, can speak just as effectively on the Latin American experience just through like sheer force of research or something. Which, does
Just
seem possible, but unlikely. And I
just
mean, I
like
hold that standard with like anyone speaking on any issue.
so this would be like, I guess, to try and appeal to you, the trans equivalent to this would like, let's say there's a person called like a trans woman called Slayer White, and she transitions like pretty late into her life, and like early on into her transition she begins like
I mean,
spewing like pretty misogynistic rhetoric about women. I think that would be a trans woman harming the minority that she's like joining into.
I think you mean like Slatelyn Jenner or something. Because Blair White started transitioning at like
No, 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 it's
20
just a
or something.
hypothetical person. Like
Yeah, I
I
know. I'm
wasn't
just
like,
saying that
oh,
the
you're just
name
making the
you
meme. Okay,
choose,
yeah.
it seems to imply
Slate
things that aren't
Slate
true about Blair White.
Slatelyn Jenner is actually a better example. You're actually
Yeah,
correct.
because she started transitioning like fairly late in life, and yeah, it's like I mean, I haven't looked in detail about the things that, you know, this hypothetical Slateland Jenner believes and has said about like women, but I mean, if she's wrong about stuff, then like I agree that's bad. And it's like she should be more careful when saying things, if she has less life experience living as a woman. But then I apply that to like, you know, I apply that equally to any group, and it doesn't seem like much of a reason to say like, transracial people are invalid or, alternatively like transgender
Um,
people are invalid. It just seems like,
I'm not saying that
saying that
like
like, hey, these people, if they're gonna speak on issues, need to ground their epistemic axioms.
you're right, and I'm not saying that like I think I think the handshake. I'm gonna handshake you here. I'm not gonna say that transracial people are invalid. I just think that if it's a transracial person who's going from a like a majority or from a privileged position to a like a minority status, that it would be fair to be wary of them and what they speak on. Maybe that I think the issue with that though, that you probably just realized with that statement, is that it can like you could easily apply that to trans women, right?
Well, I'm not sure if I believe that either men or women are um look, I think there's pros and cons to each side, and that both are disadvantaged just in very different ways. So I
Okay,
think you
well,
could actually point
this
that out as a legitimate asymmetry if you wanted, but I'm not sure if you want to claim that men and
I don't know,
women are both
because
oppressed
I
by
would make the because
patriarchy.
I believe in like a patriarchal society, and that there is benefits and negatives to being a man. But like I think there are more like what's it called offsets or negative things that you inherit from being a woman, right?
Well, I think they're in such drastically different categories that that's just going to come down to like your personal preference. Like, would you rather like be paid more, or would you rather like have more fulfilling friendships and an advantage in the dating market? It's
Ouch.
like which one
Stings.
do you prefer? And it's like these are very different things.
All right.
Which yeah. And you
So
can even mitigate those by like the circumstances of like your personality, because it's like, if it's like you're a man but then like you're just very very independent, that's just like in your nature and it doesn't bother you at all, then like it's, more upsides than it otherwise would be. But
all right.
yeah.
So do you want to like ask any questions, or are we just gonna handshake it here?
Um I don't know.
I'd
Just when
I'd
you
be
say
interested.
wary, like I'm kind of suspicious of that phrasing, but I have to see like I'd have to see it in action, like if you are more wary than I think is justified or something.
Okay. That is fair.
I
But
don't know. How long do you
I'm just
think it
coming.
takes to internalize a culture?
How long do I to really especially like a culture that has experienced like a lot of negative trauma, and especially if you're a group that has either been a perpetrator or has been an observer of that trauma, I would think that it would take at least more than 2 years, right?
Damn, I'd call it a year. I feel like any idea you can learn in a year if you really try.
I don't know if that's you expecting a lot of the average person, or
Yeah,
I'm not
it might
sure.
just be me projecting my
Wouldn't there be
experiences and
precedent?
beliefs about learning things.
Wouldn't like language immersion be like precedent, even though that's only one, but a major aspect, I would say, of culture.
What do you
Uh,
mean?
like language immersion, when because it's always been talked about how it's like much more efficient learning and like acquiescing a language versus just having to kind of like drill in like language in like college classes, for instance.
You're right. You're right, but yeah, that's basically it. And the reason I say like I said 2 years off the top of my head, because to me it makes sense. It's like, well, a year to like examine all your internal like biases, and then another year to like really understand like the weight of like historical events and stuff, right? That's just off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm expecting people to learn too quickly.
Like for
I don't know,
example,
but I
like
think that we'll just find that out, like if transracialism becomes like at all a common thing, which I doubt it will. But
but yeah, so you understand like somewhat my position. I understand yours a little bit more. That's a
yeah.
good discussion. Hi,
Uh,
Claire.
Hi,
I want
Claire.
to. I'm interested
Hi,
in
Marky.
the taking a crack at the discussion as
Yeah, go
well.
for it, Mark.
Poggers.
Uh,
Wait, what discussion are we having? Just
We're
real
having transracialism. So
Oh,
it's a pretty
Yeah, never
good
mind. You guys
trend.
can talk.
This is a productive one though. This is a productive one. I promise.
Recall, I'm not Hugh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
True,
no,
that is
but
true.
that is
which means you
that
won't
is-
go insane talking to me. I'm increasingly of the opinion that the problem is other people go insane talking to Hugh rather than Hugh being unreasonable.
I mean, my conversations with Hugh on transgender stuff was like it put me more on edge, but I was able to handle them. But maybe I'm tooting my own ass, tooting my own horn. I said it wrong. Okay.
Shooting your own
Well,
ass horn.
Yeah, sure. But I think to get into transracialism, I think there needs to be a pre-discussion with my perspective on trans like specifically how I believe a lot of people like view pronouns, and this model that I think like I use this model which Hugh I used like in a descriptive sense, but I agreed with you that it wasn't like it wouldn't it isn't ideal that people think it this way for their own well-being, right? Because like descriptively, if this is how things are, I think it would make neopronouns like difficult for the people that think in this way. So now let me explain my model.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well,
Go
yeah,
for it.
well, I'm gonna actually.
Alright.
Mark's about to get into it.
Okay, so so from what I can tell, so I think there's when people have like, let's say, a specific gender identity, but then they have a gender expression that's opposite from their identity, and let's say there's someone who hasn't really encountered or hasn't clocked someone before, let's say, right? They're going to see this expression, this gender expression, and maybe they might assume gender, right? But they'll get corrected, and then they can respect the corrected pronouns. Now, what I'm worried is that, and I don't know the actual ratio of how many like transgendered people see things in this way, but I think a lot of people use pronouns as a proxy for the mental state of how other people initially perceive their gender, right? So like even if you like they realize their mistake and like correct themselves, I'll always know that not always, but I'll know that in this current circumstance where they made that mistake, they see me as a different gender on an instinctual level. And so even if they use that different pronoun, which I correct them on, I don't really think they actually see me as the pronoun that refers to that gender. They're just using that to respect me, respect my preferences, right? Which is nice. And maybe they're a bit woke, right? But it's not really how they perceive me. So in a sense, it's kind of a lie, right?
Okay.
This is a Steelman version of like Mr. Girl and like some trans person that emailed Destiny, by the way.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard my response to this in the past, have you?
I haven't.
Oh, my
that's why I'm
response to this
curious.
is that language literally changes the way that you see the world. Like, if you make an effort to refer to someone with different pronouns, it changes how you view them. Like,
Yes.
have you read 1984?
No, Mercury.
It's
I
like
actually
that, but
agree with you.
good.
Well, no. So Hugh actually argued this, but used in the form of an anecdote, and this is so the way they described it to me was essentially the more they were exposed to talking with transgender people, the more they saw them as the gender, as the pronoun, like the gender that's specific to the pronoun that they were corrected on, right? Rather than correcting it in their head before saying the pronoun. But to me, what that tells me is that yeah, like I agree, like that's something that people can get to, but I think initially, and for a lot of people, also because like exposure to trans people IRL is not as common because they're a minority, right? So but what that tells me is there's a different phenomena that happens. You've ever heard the difference between absolute pitch and relative pitch for musically
Yeah.
inclined people? Yeah. So for me, you're using a reference in relative pitch to be able to figure out the pitch, right? Rather with absolute pitch, it's more of similar to how we instantly recognize a color when we see it. It's not even something that we refer to. It's just innate. And then there's a way in which you can essentially replicate absolute pitch even if you don't have it, and this is what's called absolute relative pitch. But what really is happening is that you're using that referencing capability that's inherent in relative pitch, but it's trained so it's trained to the point where you condition yourself to you condition um, going from that reference point to the actual pitch so fast that functionally it's equivalent to absolute pitch. It's like the same speed as something that's innate. It's like second nature. So I think, and I don't know for sure, but I think that's kind of what's happening when Hugh described their anecdote, because over time they train their relative pitch in terms of being able to like change their innate perception of someone's expression to well, if assuming the expression is not their actual identity, right? It's the whatever the pronoun is, they change it to that pronoun, but it's so quick that it's essentially the same as like someone that isn't like that. Let's say.
I feel like that's not
What do you
quite.
think about that?
I feel like that's not quite the same thing as what I was talking about, or because it's like he's saying that based on that person's expression, it then like so if he sees like a person who's like expressing their gender in like a trans womanish way, but like a non-passing trans womanish way, then like you're saying that he's adjusted basically his perception of. So like I guess you're saying that he internally still clocks that person, but then he'll automatically have his brain like correct that based on his understanding of like other additional information, I guess.
Right. And I'm not sure. There's like one assumption that if you can break that assumption, then I would concede. But I just but yeah, I would say that's technically I think possibly what's happening. Like
This does seem
and
totally unfalsifiable.
it's hard. Yeah, that's the issue. I don't like that because I want it to be falsifiable because I want to know if I'm right or wrong.
I don't
Um,
know. There was just a cis guy, like a cisgender
mhm.
guy, who for some reason, I just internally gendered as female. I have no idea
Hmm.
why. And I noticed that and it was annoying me, so I just like went out of my way to like correct my thoughts and think about him more and like intentionally use, he him pronouns for that person whenever he came up. And then that like just changed the way that I think about him. And it doesn't feel like there's any like sliding or anything going on here. It just feels like now I view him as like a man more now.
I guess I just it feels like condition like if
Like
you
it feels
condition your
like you
hmm?
can
Go on.
definitely say that no, there's just this very fast relative thing going on. It's like I can't
Yeah,
prove
that's
you
what I'm
wrong,
thinking.
but like I don't know what evidence would ever prove that wrong, and it just seems like the thing with less steps is the thing that makes more sense to believe.
Well, I'll give you the reason why I tend to prefer my model versus the other one, even if they're both unfalsifiable. In this case, right? I because and maybe it's specific to the person, rather which model it is, because to me, I have an anecdote. I have a personal anecdote. So when
No,
I
it's
was
my
in
move.
high
You can't take it. It's my
no,
move.
well,
Make up your
too,
own.
too bad.
Okay, sorry. Continue.
uh, all right. Well, this one's actually a source of it's something that I still hate thinking about nowadays because it's made me like it's kind of made me part of the reason why I also uh prefer to like refer to everyone as they them even if I know their pronouns because I don't but
This is
I'll
your
get into
villain
that.
origin story.
Sure, or whatever. So there's this person in high school that I had feelings for. They were cis at the time. They were cis AFAB, and so they transitioned, right, and they were he him, and it really messed with me because of course I was attracted to them, and I couldn't see them. Even if I wanted to, even if I trained them, I literally couldn't, and it felt like I was lying. But of course, I wanted to respect that, so I tried to. But I think because I had feelings for them, and I would be reminded of how much I feel for them, and physically, they mostly just cut their hair and They were basically the same. So, but I'm sure, who knows? They might have like done something, right? But their expression stayed the same for me, and I had feelings for them, so it intensified that like inability to like like condition myself. Let's say, right, if that's the model. It was so much more difficult that it caused me to misgender them. Although I always apologized, right? And there was this other person that would hear me out when like find out that I did this. And of course, like I apologized, they're okay with it. But then it happened more than once, and there was like a pattern. It would happen over and over again, and part of it was because of what I described, but it was also partly because I would hear groups of other people in the same class, misgender them in front of them, and they were like saying he, and they were talking to the teacher, referring to the person that transitioned to the teacher, as if they weren't being able to hear them. But the person that was transitioned heard them misgendering them, and I was hearing that too, and it was like I don't know if it like reinforced that in me or something, but it was like it was so annoying because this other person that was getting incredibly mad at me for misgendering them because I did it more than once doesn't even see I'm the only person they catch apparently. And it blew up in this confrontation against me with everyone in the class watching. The teacher wasn't there, and they were so mad. It was like the biggest virtue signal confrontation I ever had, probably the only one really, IRL. And I apologized to the person that transition, right? And like they were fine with it. They were like okay because I apologized, but the person, it's like as if that person, like of course they might be like referring to other things, other people that have been misgendered in the past maybe, but if I didn't like how they were speaking for that person, in a sense. But it also gave me such a bad impact, such a fear response of misgendering people, that I always refer to people as they them, because I don't want my innate, like even as a first time thing, I don't want to misgender people. I'm scared of that. I am afraid of the people who hate they them, but I've heard they're a minority. So but yeah. What do you think about that story, Mercury?
Anti-they themers, they're coming for you.
I don't know. This just convinces me that it's difficult for you to shift your perception of other people, I guess.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
like,
maybe that you employed bad strategies, which is also always possible. I don't know.
Well, I'll go further. I'm gynosexual. Okay, I attach my sexuality to a very specific feminine expression, regardless of whether their actual gender identity or or whatnot is male or female.
So
Doesn't matter
femboys,
to me.
yes, no.
If they're androgynous.
Giga
If they're androgynous.
Based and
yes.
Rome-pilled.
Yeah,
True.
but yeah, that's like, and if women are too masculine to me, I wouldn't find that attractive. So there's my
No tomboys.
No, I don't. I think tomboys actually have a feminine quality to them. I'm talking about.
Yeah, it's literally true.
Yeah, I genuinely believe they have like even butch lesbians. I could for some butch lesbians I can see it. That it's feminine enough for me to be attracted to them. I'm
Looks
saying this on a
female
stream.
I think it's literally just if they're hot enough. It's
But yeah, but like I think that's
whatever hot is to you. I think it's if they're hot enough, it's whatever's usually fine. I think.
But what's really fucked up about this, I might go Mr. Girl level here. But
Okay,
So not many people know this, but if you check stream, this meme was actually literally made about Marcadius.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Where?
Wait, let me see.
Why?
Wait, hold on. Let me say this.
Well, I have to check the stream. I have to open it up.
Totally not just baiting more viewers by not posting in a voice channel, but for typers.
Wait, there's a meme about Marcadius?
Holy shit, I cannot listen to my voice. Okay, let me scroll.
I can't either. Oh.
Oh, okay. I thought I included my name or something, but that's... Yeah.
No, it's literally you.
What's it called? Continue, sorry.
Yeah, well, what's really fucked up about this is, I oftentimes, I think on an instinctual level, because of how it's either something that's like innate in everyone, or it's especially the case for me because of my gynosexuality, that I take notice of my perception of someone's gender expression through either their their initial appearance, like without me. It's something I can't control. It's something I notice. I hate it. I hate this. It's initial appearance. I take notice of that, and if I can't do that, right, like I guess in a Discord voice call, right, voices also are a big deal for me. It just happens, and I fucking hate it, and it informs my potential inclination to misgender them based off that. So but in a sense, it also reminds me to take note of that. So it's like it also serves as a way
Carsonian
to
sense.
protect myself and say they them instead. I
have a
hate it. I
question
hate
for
it.
you.
Yes, I know.
Why
Okay, go for it.
do you like when you say you hate it? Do you hate that it happens, or like do you hate the fact that like you feel this way about it?
I think it's a bit of both. I think it's also not fair to the people that especially if because like in a sense I might be lying to them, right?
Well, yeah, but it's not fair to you either, right? To expect you to not feel that way. I don't think you should hate yourself for that.
It might that might be true. It's just I kind of been taught because of that experience that I mentioned to hate myself for it to some extent. I guess that's where it comes from.
I don't think you should.
I appreciate that.
I think that's an unhealthy.
Yeah, you should
I mean,
love
I
yourself.
understand. Yeah, I
You
think
should look into the mirror and then like.
Probably
Let's
not
get
that
rid of
useful.
yourself.
to
You
hate
know what's
yourself.
funny?
Yeah.
I actually told that person to look in the mirror when they were arguing with me. They got
God.
really pissed. They were already pissed, but I told them to look in the mirror, like, look at yourself. Like, stop.
Now my joke was gonna be something else, but Claire's a mod, so can't.
Oh,
true.
Rock Claire ruining us for us all.
Bro,
How dare
Ruining
you?
content.
So
you
true.
should take out a very nice cucumber and then like.
oh,
Yeah, okay.
Nick, you cut out.
Okay, don't worry about it. It wasn't
Oh.
anything.
Luckily, nobody
Yeah.
heard that except
No one
me.
heard anything.
Hopefully,
see.
I won't be able to check this VOD back and hear anything.
No, I think I might have cut out on everyone's end.
Wait,
You
something
know, all
about
those
take a very nice cucumber and.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear cucumber.
Oh, okay. Well,
So I want to introduce a new term into the what's it called, common parlance, and it is in a Carsonian sense when referring to things about Mr. Girl. Just like
Carsonians.
Sony.
Yeah.
In
Wait,
just like
who's
Mr.
Carson?
sense.
His name is Max
Max
Carson. Right?
Carson.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
In a Carsonian sense.
In a Carsonian sense, I think
Man
you
in
should
the
just
mirror.
try harder.
But yeah,
And
like
then also in a Carsonian sense, I think
I think you're
will say that,
lying,
like,
Mark.
one of
I think you actually wanted to misgender him.
God damn.
In a
I think,
You know what?
Carsonian
I am
sense.
transphobic. There you go.
In a Carsonian sense, I knew it.
I think I do appreciate how Mr. Girl does want people to not hate themselves for feeling certain ways. Obviously, he might take it in like a different way in regards to how you like act on it or like how you deal with it. But I don't want anyone to like hate themselves over like how they feel about someone internally. I think that's not good.
Yeah. I've been lucky enough that that was the only instance, and every other person that I've talked to. I mean, also it's courtesy of how I talk and like am charitable people and like try to be like nice, right? And I do a lot on that part, so there's that. But yeah, I haven't had people disagree with that what you said, Claire. So I appreciate that.
Wait, Mercury, did I already ask you my hypothetical that I was actually curious about? I might have already.
Which hypothetical?
About Adam and John? Probably not. I think that you weren't here for that.
I don't think so.
Okay, so like you are very much like you're focused on like the consequences of actions and whether they're good, right?
Yeah.
So my hypothetical is Adam and John are both friends with a girl called Sarah, and Sarah's in an abusive relationship, and Adam wants to get Sarah out of that abusive relationship, but only because he wants to have sex with Sarah. and John wants to get out of wants her to get out of that relationship, or tries to help her get out of that relationship, because he thinks that's what a good friend would do. And I thought that your response to this hypothetical would be, well, the consequences of the actions are still good, so they're both equal, right?
Kind of. I mean, there's more nuance to it because, wait, who is the first person?
So Adam is the one who wants to have sex with Sarah, and then John is the one who wants to help Sarah out because he thinks that's what a good friend would do. I can write it down for you if you want.
No, I'm writing it down.
Okay.
I wrote it down. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Already
so
done it. Giga Chad.
okay, so like, I mean, I think that there's reasons why, like, we'd care to inform Sarah about these facts because, like, you know, if Sarah knows that Adam is only doing this because he wants to, like, have sex with her, then that implies that, like, if she becomes, you know, unavailable or whatever, then, you know, like, he won't do good things for her, etc., etc. But I mean, if it's just like they're trying to get her out of an abusive relationship and then the universe stops, then it's like, yeah, there's no difference.
Okay.
The only thing is, like, well, I don't know. Now Adam might be, like, weirdly entitled to having a relationship with her because he did it for that reason. Or, you know, it shows that he's very self-obsessed, you know, which might imply that he'll engage in other behaviors that would actually be bad, you know, etc., etc. But if
Okay.
these are the only facts and they affect nothing else and then both people act exactly the same, then no, there's no difference. I don't care.
Okay. I was just curious. I just wanted to know what your answer would be.
By the way, my whole model though, there's like the part where, given my model, I guess I don't know how it would compute with like neopronouns, right? Because within my model, right, like the pronouns are proxy for what gender someone perceives the person that they're clocking, right? But I guess there's no gender like well, I mean, I mean, there's no like standard like perception of what like any particular neopronoun would be in terms of like how they would see their gender, let's say, right? If that made sense. So like, I feel like one person's idea of like a Zer would be different from another person's Zer.
And
And
actually, if you pull up stream, I think I think that I know exactly what an idets looks like.
well, yeah.
Um,
So I mean, I was thinking about your neopronouns, and I think I think yours is a weird gray area. I think I could see I could like some I think that would be an exception maybe. Uh but like even for like people let's say like for if we turn it to like the sexual version of this, right? Like objectophilia. I'm sure there's going to be different like standards for what person considers an object, I guess. I can imagine that. But I guess that's sexual, not like identity. So it's like
Uh,
yeah,
actually,
I don't know what to think about that.
Mark, when you're done, I think I came up with another good reason why I think transracialism could cause harm. That I'm not sure if I actually didn't consider this until like a couple minutes ago.
Okay.
okay.
So, are you willing to hear me out, Mark?
Wait, could I respond to the thing about
Yeah,
neopronouns?
go, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
yeah, I feel like my response should be kind of predictable. It's just that, like, as more people use neopronouns, especially if they like line up along certain aspects of presentation or whatever, then I think that people will start to like viscerally perceive them as like those neopronouns, or
What
at
I would
least
say
some
is,
quantity of them. Like, I feel like I probably will, because it seems like I've in the past modified, you know, my thoughts about people's like pronouns and genders and all that stuff through
I would agree with you if I agreed with every premise that you put, but I disagree with the premise that everyone would like. You were saying like if people would use neopronouns, they would have like they would line up with like a very standardized like expression for each neopronoun or something like that. If or if you phrase it like how you would say it, maybe. Like I'm not sure if that's like
I
that's what
think
would happen.
I
And
think
that's my
that will
issue.
happen if neopronouns catch on. If they fail to catch on and they're just like a thing that a very tiny minority of like, you know, very strange individuals use, then it's like, yeah, it probably won't get in any way standardized and then that won't occur. But it's,
Okay.
like, if people
I mean, I
of
hope you're
certain
right.
political persuasions, opinions, etc., start to use idiots and, present in a certain way and have a certain view of like queerness or whatever, etc., then it's like I feel like that's gonna start to line up until there's a certain idiots, gender.
I mean, I'd look forward to that being the reality.
Oh, I don't
I
think that'll
think
actually happen.
you don't. Oh, okay. Well, then shit. I mean, I'm kind of doomer too, but like, but I don't want to. But
Look,
yeah.
it's easier for me to imagine the end of capitalism than the end of gender. And easier for me to imagine the end of the world than the end of capitalism.
Hmm.
On that
Well,
realism shit.
How about the end of history, huh?
Oh, I can imagine the end of history real easy. All I gotta do is look around.
Bro.
Right here.
yeah.
Oh, by the way,
Okay.
how's Russia doing? Poorly.
All right.
I
So
don't
can
even
I
know.
can I
Yeah.
can I
Yeah.
can I
Go
give
ahead.
my
Okay.
All right. So oftentimes like are you familiar of like the idea of like commodification of like black and people of color culture for the sake of coolness or like for the sake of of appearing different?
Yeah, like people like rapping or whatever.
Yeah, like
I
so
don't
like
know.
a white person getting into rapping and then moving genres, like this is what in the hip hop community being called like a culture vulture. This is like almost quite literally the premise of like 2016 movie Get Out. A little bit. So like I think another issue that comes into play with like a person who's part of the majority becoming transracial is like the possibility that they could be using this new identity as like essentially social credit or social like what was it called, cred for a short amount of time before like deciding to return to their original identity. Does that make sense?
Okay, so basically trenders.
um I don't know, do you believe in trenders?
Sure. Why not? I
Yeah,
think
like
I think
it's
they're
kind of like
valid
the
and
argument.
based, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, unless they made a mistake, in which case, wish they'd considered that better. But yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with at least for, transgender people, like somebody being like, yeah, no, I got this other gender, and then it's just like, okay, so
Would you see anything wrong with like a white person being like, yeah, like I'm black or anything like, and like they're doing it for that social credit?
I don't actually know. Um, I guess there's like the idea that they might be taking away opportunities or something.
It's more so the idea that they're using this
Like that feels gross, but I'm not a Kantian, so using something doesn't that's not an argument for
no,
me.
so like my argument would be like they're using this sort of identity as a sort of like exoticism. Is that does that make sense? Like they're using
Why,
it as like
like, spell out why that's bad, and then I'll just agree that it's bad if it's bad, and then I'll be like,
so
people shouldn't do it for that
I
particular.
would say that's bad because okay, wait, let me give me a second so I can put it into words for you. Hmm. So I'm going to use an analogy because I feel like the analogy is good. Um, I feel like doing this for the social credit would kind of be like going to like a third world impoverished country for a vacation, like, and then saying like, oh, like, look, I'm experiencing this thing when like you have like a really nice and cushy middle class home like all the way across the sea. Does that make sense? And you could easily return anytime you want to. I
Yeah.
feel like that's the only way I can put it into words.
So that also feels gross, but I'm gonna say it's actually immoral. Like, the reasons for that are all contingent, basically. Like, I don't think it's in any way inherently immoral. Because it's like, it might be wrong because it gives people, like, an incorrect impression about, like, you know, what your life is like. Or,
Well, so
it,
the reason
y-
I'm saying it's wrong is because they're using it for their own social benefit, right? They're using an experience which isn't theirs for
Or maybe
some
it like
sort of social
normalizes lying or
leverage.
something. That seems
What'd you
like
say?
maybe it normalizes lying. Maybe that's a take. You
Yeah,
know,
it's
because you're
also like
effectively
normalized.
lying or
It is
something.
basically lying. It's like when you say like, "Oh yeah, I was there." Like, have you ever met a person in real life who like always tries to one up you and like essentially lies to get that one up, and like you can it's bullshit.
Yeah, I guess the problem then is it takes away any chance of you feeling like you got the most up in a conversation, which is important to feel valued in conversations, I think.
So just am I making a little bit more sense with that?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, good. Pog, P-pog.
Because basically it ends up one-upping people unfairly if, you know, someone's like, well, I have
Well,
this.
it's more that you're like you're you're one upping people in two social spheres. You're one upping people in the social sphere of like the minority. You're essentially like co-opting, and then you're one upping people. I guess in this scenario would be the other white people who like have to be like, God damn it, they identify as black. They're so cool, right?
Maybe.
That's a little bit silly, but hopefully you understand.
Yeah, I feel like I can say a similar thing that I can about trenders, which is that everyone fucking hates trenders. Um, and I think everyone fucking hates, you know, transracial people.
Do you dislike transracial people?
No.
Okay.
I
I
also
feel
don't
like
dislike trenders though.
it's I don't know why this came to my mind, but when you said, "Do you dislike transracial people?" I just got reminded of Jesse Lee Peterson.
So
Do you
true.
love black people?
Do you
Because I guess
love
it's that.
transracial people? Do you, Nick, love transracial people?
I love transracial people. I love all
Based.
people.
Well, why are we even having this conversation then?
Because I
What's
still
wrong with
think
you?
they can cause harm, right? So like
Yeah, I mean
that's
everyone
basically.
can cause harm. They can buy a gun at Walmart and shoot up a school. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that
but
would cause a lot of harm.
we already got through this part of the conversation.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
like,
because you're
yeah,
saying it's a more specific kind of
yeah, it's
harm.
a more specific type of harm.
Well, I mean, only Americans can do that,
Yeah, true.
Yeah,
more or
I guess
less.
I'd be more. I'm in line in ideal sense with like being consistent and like going for transracialism. And there's like a lot of facets of it that I just haven't been. I'm not privy to because I just haven't had conversations with people who aren't invested in this topic. But like I guess my next step would be to like think about like the logistical issues, right? Like for instance, for people who are transgender as like a parallel, right? There are people who like prefer to identify as a different gender. They don't, uh, but they have like different like cosmetic, like more so cosmetic non-surgical methods of transitioning. And if I were to apply that to like transracialism, right? So, yeah, so
I
like
know where this is going.
yeah, yeah. So like, there's either like a clash between transracialists and like the cultural appropriation type people, or like the people who are afraid of digital blackface, in the progressive left, and it's like there's this gonna be this clash of like people who are either digital blackface because they have some like racism in them, or it's like they're people who don't want to go through maybe like some intensive or like costs of like whatever standardized procedure of transitioning that if it ever does become standardized, which I don't even know if there is, like, or just straight up going in the tanning bed. But for some people, it would be easier to just do something that's like a temporary like discoloring of the skin because it's like easy, because like now we can get into like the D-sisters parallel of transgender people with transracial people, and it's like now we're like getting like a niche of it, like super niche. I don't even know
Yeah.
how much niche we can get. It's like I don't know what to think about that, you know. It makes it so complex, and I just don't think there's a lot of hope in that regard logistically.
Yeah, I mean, I,
I like reading Mercury's document live. By the way, it's actually pretty great.
thanks. I try to add some visual
It's
interest, you
honestly like
know.
a really good way to keep track of the combo, and they're pretty honest representations of what the positions held are. So good job.
Thanks.
Oh, I didn't know that. I thought you were doing an essay. I didn't actually.
No,
No, no,
I'm
no, no, no.
no, this is
Those are
just a doc I keep running. I'm doing these for every stream because if I'm not
Oh,
gonna have
that's
cam on,
cool.
I figure I should have that, and you know, and also
Oh,
ideally, you know, other people will go will go look at it, and then it'll add viewers, even, for the people who are here, because now everyone has a reason to tune into the stream.
Yeah, I was like, I didn't have a reason to turn into the stream, but like I like looking at the document and seeing what Mercury
Yeah, it's actually a
writes.
pretty good reason to tune into the stream. Come on, come all.
Hey, I actually had your stream on 240 pixels, so it was blurry, so I just assumed it was a philosophy thing, essay you were
No.
doing or something.
No.
And then I saw Marcadus and bold letters. Oh, okay. And then I saw my anecdote in there. I was like, oh, damn, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's cool.
Claire, would you like to add to this conversation in any way?
I've been like half listening.
I see you're playing Cyberpunk.
I'm finishing it up. I've been doing all the endings today. That's what I've been doing.
I am interested in what the like solutions to the logistical like concerns I have with transracialism.
So
Even
I don't
if
want to
they
think
are
about it.
frustrating to talk about, but
Yeah, I was kind of confused what exactly you were saying with those logistical concerns.
oh, just like
So I think what Mark was getting at is like
Mhm.
there will be crossfire between people who are going to be like you're just doing blackface and people are like progressives and stuff like that, right? That's what Mark is getting at.
Yeah, like there's gonna be a reason for people to like be wary of that, but there's also gonna be a reason for people to like go through methods of, let's say, like coloring the skin, because they wouldn't want to go through cost of like transitioning for transracialism if there were to be like a standardized operation for that, but like cost issues, right? Or something else that keeps them from doing that, or maybe
Can all these arguments just be used for transgender people?
exactly, that's the point. I'm making a parallel. Like these
However,
sisters.
there is a distinction because we know that or we have at least decent reason to suspect that like transgender people can't really be conversion therapied, but we don't know that's the case with transracial people. So I would recommend that transracial people attempt conversion therapy with a, like a legitimate therapist, etc., and just see.
Wait, Mercury,
we don't know
didn't
either
you
way,
yourself?
right?
Yeah, you didn't you say that there's no evidence that that conversion therapy doesn't work for specifically gender identity?
Well,
I
I
thought it was
mean,
specifically the like sexual orientation that was like confirmed to not work.
well, we have some evidence with gender
Some,
identity,
right?
but
Oh, okay.
for one,
Gotcha.
desistance rates are very low, so it seems like people at least, don't like suddenly realize that they regret everything. So that sort of indicates that like, if you transition and you could have been conversion therapied out of it, it might not be the worst thing, as opposed to like if you could have been conversion therapied and also you now regret it. It's like now it seems like a much worse thing. And then the other one is like we do have some studies that seem to show that if you experience conversion therapy and you're trans, then that can have negative mental health effects. So we don't know whether or not it's effective, but we do know if you persist with being trans after conversion therapy, then it fucks you up sometimes.
I think I can imagine why.
Yeah, but that might just be because it's like Christians doing it and like whack jobs as opposed to like, intelligent medical professionals.
Well, I know there's some for like conversion therapy for sexual orientation. There was some that was secular and some that was religious. Was it all religious for gender identity of the ones that do exist, or are there some secular ones too for that?
I think it was just a general study of just like underwent attempts by practitioners to align their gender identity with their sex assigned at birth. I think this is referencing study that I was yeah
yeah, because
yeah
there's a lot.
it was just in general recalled lifetime exposure to attempts to like reassign their gender with severe psychological distress during the previous month compared to non-gender identity what is GICE? Gender identity conversion efforts therapy. Associations were found between recalled lifetime exposure and higher odds of lifetime suicide rates and exposure before the age of 10 years and increased odds of lifetime suicide attempts. No significant differences were found when comparing exposure to by secular professions versus religious advisors. Okay, so they're actually both bad for you.
Huh. Okay, well then there you go.
But like maybe we'll find a study at some point. We'll do a study and it'll turn out that actually,
Right,
conversion
'cause it's
therapy
only
works for
a
like
study or
99% of people,
Mercury, I have a
and then they're
question.
just not trans later in life. And so I don't get
What
served by this.
what if we had like an untransgender being that like had 100% success rate and was able to like make people untrans? What would you like? What would you say to that? I guess.
I'd say, wow, that's weird. I wouldn't experience it because I don't know. I feel like I'd be killing myself in some way. I don't
Okay.
know. Like I feel like I wouldn't be myself, which I mean, I know people have stuff to say about that, like, oh, I made it too much a part of my personality and like who knows. But I don't know. It feels like that's a part of who I am, and it's like it would just be kind of fucked up and weird to like.
what did Nick say that you're responding to in that way? I didn't hear what they
I
said.
thought I said if we had an untransgender being that had a like 100% success rate,
Oh,
making people untrans, like I was asking them, I was
yeah. I
asking
Sounds
mean,
like
that.
a
yeah. I don't
sounds
know
like
how.
a uncharacteristically sentimental response from Mercury.
It's
Yeah, I was
not.
gonna say
You
like,
should hear my response to the experience machine hypothetical. It's the exact same thing.
Mm.
Or it's just like, I don't know. I'd be really sad to like step inside the experience machine because like that would mean I'd never set foot on the real Mars in my life. Like it could never happen, and
I,
that like unironically makes me cry.
I actually think that most people would step in if they had a taste of it beforehand. But I think the unfamiliarity and the uncertainty is the main barrier. And also the maybe not taking it seriously is another factor too. But if they actually had a taste of it and those barriers were removed, I almost because I'm a descriptive egoist, but that I'm almost positive most people would take it. And I know there's like a robbing of agency there that as a being someone who's for libertarian free will, there's definitely like a depressing
you're someone who
aspect there.
likes libertarian free will?
No. I'm speaking for Mercury. Like, given that they
Okay.
are, I can see why they're depressed. I hate being a determinist. By the way, okay, I want
Wait,
agency. I don't think
Wait, no,
I have agency.
Mercury isn't a libertarian.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I
Okay, was
just
it just
I
memes?
just think that you can't prove that libertarian free will
Oh,
isn't true. It
I think
seems
Arcadius would
intuitively
probably.
like it's false, just like it seems intuitively
okay,
like induction is valid. And so
gotcha.
that's why I agree with induction and you know, um and I reject libertarian free will, even though neither of those are
Okay.
really justified.
Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't know that. I wasn't sure. 'Cause,
Yeah.
I had
I
an
at least
argument with.
tentatively entertain libertarian
Mhm.
free will.
I know
oh,
I've not been having too much internet because I had a discussion with a friend, and he believes in existential free will, and I said you're philosophically coping, and then he's like, I'm not having this conversation with you.
but yeah, I mean, being a hard determinist, I would still hate that. But I like certainty, and hard determinism gives me that sense. But I also like having, um, like the idea of free will is super appealing to me. Uh, so I'm super mixed. I'm super mixed on it.
Makes
Um,
Grace Arcadius.
yeah,
Well, that's like the ultimate intuition feeling, right?
yeah.
It's like I feel like I have free will, even though logically, like a lot of
Well,
things seem to be extremely predetermined.
I mean, it also just feels like, there's no way to justify, free will existing. And like,
Yeah,
influencing physics. Like that just seems weird to imagine that, I can just like in some way freely like violate causality and cause some like mental states to emerge. It's like that feels weird to imagine, but like it feels weird. It's not an argument.
Well, with my